Every night I would come to work knowing I'd face anxiety, stress, chaos, and just the busyness of taking care of people. And on top of that, there were so many situations where we'd face death in ways we'd never encountered before. So suddenly there was an urgency to spend time knowing what God had for me and what I needed to provide to those patients. From the time I was little, like 5 years old, I used to talk with my cousin and we would just say we wanted to be nurses together. And little did I know, I would actually become a nurse.
Day one in India, we took a nap because we've been up for a long time.
So I graduated nursing school and started working on the oncology unit, treating cancer patients, more of a long-term care because they often are receiving chemo and different treatments for weeks at a time. So I was kind of able to start building the relationships while I was also just getting used to being a nurse. I had been working on oncology for about 6 months, was starting to get a good groove with taking care of patients and really very excited about working there. And then we started to hear about this virus that was apparently wiping people out across the world. At this point, Lynchburg hadn't really responded at all. We were still kind of just continuing with our normal lives. And then over about a month's period, it was kind of like everything got flipped upside down. The hospital had to naturally convert some units. They had to shut them down. So the rest of the hospital had more patients than they were typically used to taking care of. So I would get ready for work and then I would call the staffing center and they would just tell me wherever there was the greatest need that night. And often my follow-up question was, how do I get to that floor? I literally didn't even know where in the hospital it was. It was literally like, all right, what floor is that? Which elevator do I take? Sounds good. There was just such a need, and it was kind of like all hands on deck. I remember it was the middle of the night, and charge kind of came up and was like, hey, they're admitting a COVID patient, and I need you, or there was one other nurse who was capable of potentially doing it. And so she was like, who wants to do it? And so it was kind of like, well, I guess it's me then. There was like these double doors you walk through and there was yellow tape. It was called like a warm zone and you could walk into the warm zone, but then there was red tape and you couldn't walk beyond the red tape unless you were fully gowned up and like 100% protected. And so they would bring the patients up, leave them at the yellow. We would have to get a bed, bring it down the hallway at the red, and we'd have to transfer them in the hallway to a new bed and then wheel them down to their room. You couldn't bring anything into your unit. It would all be delivered outside of your unit and you would have one person that would go pick up everything for you and bring it back. We were alone, scared, and overwhelmed. I'd always known like nursing was very much a calling, but there became like this deep sense of urgency at this time that it was like, I have got to be in touch with what the Holy Spirit has for me or else I'm not gonna succeed. There were so many things outside of my control and just uncomfortable that there was like a reliance on God that I hadn't felt previously. It was actually exactly what I needed. I needed to have that dependence on Him. There were just so many nights that I felt like there was just confirmation that God wanted me to be there at that point for those people. It was either like random friends of friends. And so when we made that connection, it was like, they told me like, oh my gosh, I feel so much comfort from knowing who you are. Like I know your sibling or I know your neighbor. God has me here right now, taking care of people that are at the worst point in their life, most of them, for a reason, you know? When we were an oncology unit treating cancer patients, we had end-of-life care patients, we had people going through really hard things. And then when we became COVID, these people hadn't received a diagnosis a year ago or 6 months ago. They had received a diagnosis 2 days ago. You come back the next night and they're a little worse, and you come back the next night and they're a little worse. And just like to watch the progression occur over such a short amount of time was really hard. Like we had seen a lot of hard deaths occur beforehand. But how quickly things would happen at this point, it was just so hard to like cope with as you're going. You want to make sure that everything you're doing in that situation is meaningful. Because you don't know how much longer this person has. So like, I just remember thinking, I've got to pray with these people. Because that may be the last conversation. And so it's like, I had to make sure my relationship with God was strong. Because how else am I gonna bring someone else to the feet of Jesus unless I'm going there myself? I remember transferring a patient to the ICU and just asking her if I could pray for her before she goes. And just putting myself in that person's shoes and knowing that like if I was going to be intubated, I'd want to know people were praying for me and cared about me, which has been a total privilege, but also probably the hardest thing I've ever done. We went to India. There were these women that were called the Sisters of Compassion, and they would go into villages and they would dress people's wounds. And we're talking, they're outside in the dust and the dirt, and they're taking off these terrible wounds where people lose limbs, they have leprosy. They were never like, how dare the government not provide us with more supplies? You know, they were like, these are the children of God, we're gonna take care of them, of course we're going to. So just like switching my mindset of like, yes, this is my job, yes, I do get paid for it, but it's so much more than that. It's been hard and overwhelming and frustrating and sad. It's easy to fall into this mindset of just like, oh my gosh, everyone's doing something wrong. We need more of this, we need more of that. And I found myself going to that place too. But then also, I feel like I've realized, and God has totally shown me, if He called me to do this, then it's not about those things. But that's like a daily reminder. And so it was like every day before I went to work, and still, I just need to come to Jesus and read His word and understand that my life and my goals in life are to bring people to the Lord. And so if I get that opportunity 3 or 4 days a week because I'm taking care of sick people, then that's amazing. And I'm glad that I have that privilege.